Hello, welcome to Bitparade.co.uk's video review of Splosion Man on the Xbox 360. As you can guess from his name, Splosion Man's chief ability is that he can explode, and he can do this 3 times without charging up. You use this mechanic to make your way through the level. This involves bouncing off walls, destroying enemies, normal jumps, and defending yourself from enemy attacks. The only other abilities you really have is to grab hold of ledges and to pick up donut-eating scientists, both of which become important later on. The early sections of the game are a lot of fun. You're bouncing around freely, rapidly chasing through the levels, and soaking up its charm. It's the charm that really makes the game early on, with Splosion Man's Daffy Duck ADHD mannerisms winning you over with their pepperoni insanity. However, as you progress through the game, it's the difficulty that will either seal the deal or put you off. Gameplay becomes largely trial and error later on as you accept that you have to die to see how not to do a section. It's not that it's impossible to do certain sections first time, and it's a sense of blind panic that is, for me, the real joy of the game, and it turns into well-deserved pride if you're successful. Unfortunately, many sections are repeated with only slight variations. Coupled with the same aesthetic that runs right through the game, everything can seem a little familiar later on. And it's a shame too, because in the early parts of the game you're spoiled with new ideas. Levels can seem overly long with checkpoints too far apart. However, revisiting levels, as we've done for this video, shows that a run through, free from mistakes, is a quick one. Perhaps this is deliberate, this deceptive length of the levels, because the only replayability really comes from the time trials later on, with challenges coming up in the next few months. While much has been made of the game's difficulty, aside from a few cheap enemy deaths, you generally feel success and failure are down to you, and nothing is impossible with enough attempts. That said, there are occasions where you don't explode as you'd expect, and as mentioned, some of the enemies can juggle you, or Mega Man style knock you off platforms. The occasional camera shifts when it becomes too zoomed in, or even when it's zoomed out and you lose Splosion Man amongst the other explosions and general kind of orange glow of the levels, all add to the game's difficulty. For me though, the game needs to be difficult to be fun. Yeah, the mechanic's good, but if it stayed as easy as the initial levels, it would become tiresome and you're just left with the humour, which is also repeated quite a lot. Probably the biggest compliment I can pay to Splosion Man though is that despite it reusing ideas, aesthetics and humour, it remains fun right to the end. Yeah, it's difficult, and yes, it can be frustrating, but without those it wouldn't be half the game it is. I genuinely recommend it. As a start to the Summer Arcade, we couldn't have asked for more. At 800 points, the game offers quite a lot of gameplay. The main game will last for quite a while anyway, but then there's the time trials to go back to, with competitions held later in the year. There's also the multiplayer, which apparently suffers from lag at the minute, although we haven't had a chance to test it ourselves, although in theory it could offer a great experience. So while this may have seemed a negative review, I genuinely do recommend Splosion Man. It's not perfect, and it'd be remiss of us not to mention the problems the game does have. However, it has a kind of retro charm to it and difficulty to it that we haven't really seen since Mega Man 9.